Welcome to the Artskah Preliminary Hearings, hosted by the World Affairs Council of Austin, Legal Studies Division. This video covers the structure and legal foundations of this International Court of Justice simulation. The Artskah Preliminary Hearing is an ICJ simulation in partnership with the Armenian Bar Association. Our mission is truth through law. The core objectives include examining the plausibility of Artskah's claims and training students in legal reasoning, modeling an authentic judicial process. A preliminary hearing determines if a case merits a full trial. It focuses solely on legal plausibility, without witnesses or a final verdict. The applicant's role is to present legal arguments, establish a factual foundation, demonstrate plausibility, and uphold procedural integrity. The judicial panel applies the ICJ statute, ensures impartial questioning, evaluates the evidence scope, and issues a recommendation to the full bench. The hearing addresses two primary points of error: sovereignty, based on the Montevideo criteria, and compliance with the Genocide Convention, Article 2C. There are two burdens of proof: establishing the legal basis for statehood and providing substantive evidence of genocidal intent. Both must meet a plausibility threshold. The standard of plausibility is not beyond a reasonable doubt, but requires a credible factual foundation, ensuring fairness and rigor during the ICJ admissibility phase. The hearing structure includes opening statements, panel questioning, closing arguments, and private deliberation by the panel. Our educational mission is to teach law through real cases, encourage civic reasoning, promote ethical advocacy, and build global awareness. Point of error 1 concerns sovereignty, applying the Montevideo criteria to assess permanent population, define territory, government, and capacity for international relations. The Montevideo criteria defines a state based on four elements: a permanent population, a defined territory, an effective government, and the capacity to enter into relations with other states. The concept of permanent population involves continuous presence, a stable demographic identity, shared political will, and cultural continuity. Regarding defined territory, Artskah's borders are identifiable, administrative control was maintained, and territorial governance was evident, despite disputes, consistent with ICJ rulings. Artskah's government and institutions demonstrated functional governance through executive and legislative bodies, an independent judiciary, and a civil service. The capacity for international relations was met through engagement with NGOs, diaspora partnerships, parliamentary outreach, and external communication channels. The principle of jus cogens, self-determination, is a non-derogable right that applies to distinct peoples, supporting remedial independence and providing a legal foundation for sovereignty. Article 2.4 of the UN Charter prohibits the threat or use of force, respects territorial integrity, and preserves the political independence of all states and entities. Article 2.4 specifically prohibits force against territorial integrity and political independence, applying to entities with state attributes and protecting self-governing peoples, which is relevant to Artskah's case. In international law, effective control often defines statehood, while recognition is a political, not a legal, act. Artskah met the functional criteria by exercising governance. The Kosovo Advisory Opinion of 2010 established that declarations of independence are not prohibited, internal objections are irrelevant, and recognition is not required, thus supporting Artskah's claim. The Western Sahara Advisory Opinion from 1975 emphasized that self-determination is paramount, territorial claims are secondary, and distinct peoples have the right to choose their status, reinforcing Artskah's rights. The East Timor Advisory Opinion affirmed that self-determination is an erga omnes obligation, binding on all states and cannot be extinguished by force, validating Artskah's autonomy. The Namibia Advisory Opinion established that unlawful control does not lead to a loss of identity, occupation does not erase rights, and legal personality persists, supporting protected status. The Palestine Wall Opinion showed that non-recognized entities possess rights and protected status under law, retaining their identity, as recognition is not a prerequisite for legal protection. The trials of Artskah leaders represent a targeted dismantling of governance, which violates sovereignty protections, criminalizes state apparatus, and breaches Article 2.4 of the UN Charter. The legal conclusion is that Artskah meets the Montevideo criteria, self-determination is reinforced, ICJ precedents support the claim, and the plausibility threshold for statehood is satisfied. We now transition to point of error 2, focusing on the Genocide Convention. This section involves legal argumentation and analysis related to Article 2C. The Genocide Convention, Article 2C, defines genocide to include deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about physical destruction. This includes death, starvation, and deprivation, with intent inferred from conduct. Lemkin's principle recognizes genocide as a composite of acts, encompassing both cultural and physical destruction. It is not limited to direct killing, as a pattern of actions can reveal genocidal intent. The September 2023 assault destroyed critical infrastructure and blocked evacuation routes, making the territory uninhabitable. This caused systematic civilian harm. The forced displacement resulted in the expulsion of 100,000 Armenians with no safe path for return, alongside acts of cultural erasure, amounting to systematic population removal. Acts of cultural destruction, including the defacing of churches and destruction of cemeteries, demonstrate a clear intent to erase the Armenian identity. The Bosnia versus Serbia case showed that patterns of conduct can prove genocide, confirming that survival conditions are critical and intent can be inferred from actions. This supports the Artskah claim. Croatia versus Serbia reinforced that cultural destruction and forced displacement are relevant to genocide claims. Genocide includes the destruction of a group's existence, reinforcing Article 2C. Gambia versus Myanmar established that forced displacement and the denial of essentials are plausible genocidal acts, demonstrating that the ICJ accepts similar claims relevant to the Artskah case. The Bosnia Provisional Measures, PM of 1993, clarified that genocidal intent can be inferred from conduct, and systematic harm outweighs mere statements, supporting the applicant's burden of proof. The Southwest Africa case recognized structural discrimination, the destruction of living conditions, and systematic deprivation as actionable issues, supporting the plausibility of the current claim. The pattern of conduct, including the blockade, assault, and mass displacement, demonstrates coordinated execution and repetition, which is evidence of intent to destroy the group. Evidence of intent is seen in the long-term blockade, targeted civilian harm, cultural erasure, and forced migration, all aimed at the physical destruction of the group. The plausibility threshold is met as the claim satisfies the Article 2C standard, is supported by ICJ precedents, and rests on a credible factual foundation, justifying a full hearing on the merits. The legal conclusion is that the genocide claim is plausible, intent is demonstrated, and referral to a full trial is justified to uphold the integrity of the Genocide Convention. Thank you for watching this video on the Artskah preliminary hearings. Procedure protects truth, and truth protects justice.